Hello fellow sim racers. I'm going to start today's video with some hypothetical questions. Is this the best looking Formula 1 car of all time? Now, I'm not here to make an argument either way, but I don't think anyone would argue that it's definitely in the running. So what about this then? Is this the best sounding Formula 1 car of all time? Again, not contentious stuff, but maybe fans of the high-revving V10s of the mid-2000s might have something to say there. Okay, last one. Should this car have been the one to break Ferrari's dry spell that ran from the early 80s right through to the Byrne, Brawn, Todd, Schumacher dream team of the early 2000s? Well, it's definitely the one that got away, and that's probably how I would best sum up my journey with this car, and in fact, the entire 1990 Formula 1 season. I've started out the last couple of videos about Formula cars produced by Race Sim Studio with a similar premise. They're the best at what they do, and they keep finding small but valuable ways to improve their craft with every offering. And to be honest with you, repeating this stuff, well, it gets a bit tedious. Which, now I say it out loud, is the pinnacle of first world problems. But to some extent, it is actually a problem. What do you talk about when everyone knows that the car's going to look great, drive even better, and sound like a choir of particularly upset bees fed through this guy's live rig? Rest in peace, brother. So to get that stuff out of the way, yes, it is rather pleasing on the eyes, and it delivers in the sound department as well, which I think in the case of this car is, well, it's fairly important. And it drives beautifully, but more than that, it really does drive beautifully. In fact, within a few corners, I was picturing myself sat at my dad's computer playing Microprose Grand Prix for the first time. Now, I know that featured the 1991 season, but, well, let's not split hairs. Why do I mention this? Well, because this car feels exactly the way that I imagine it should. And I mean that. Exactly. And I've built up a model in my head by wearing out old VHS tapes of the early 90s season reviews and playing those Jeff Crammonds F1 titles. Pass that through the filter of what I would expect from Assetto Corsa and the canon of all of the other RSS cars within which this one exists, and you end up with the RSS Formula 1990 V12. Honestly, it's kind of spooky. I guess what I'm saying is that the driving dynamics of the car are just so evocative of the era. Lots of power, wide tyres and sophisticated but not quite yet ridiculous aerodynamics. It all produced decent lap times, but in cars that were still a challenge to drive, despite electronic driver aids starting to creep into the cars. Strangely, when you think of the driver aid cars of the period, you think Williams. But while their active suspension system that was perfected on the FW14 and 15 cars was undoubtedly a game changer, it was in fact Ferrari that brought a lot of new ideas to the table during the period. And as an aside, it was actually Lotus that brought electronic active suspension to Formula 1. Indeed, it would seem that history is in fact written by the victors. Anyhow, back to the V12. This car was the first to feature traction control, albeit in a very crude state by today's standards, and even then it was only on the car for the last 4 rounds of the season. The RSS Formula 1990 V12 doesn't feature traction control, and honestly that's a great thing. It's still got that squirm when you step on the loud pedal, and it'll still wheel spin in 4th gear if you're trying hard enough, and you will be. But once you do find some speed and the downforce starts to build, it's a pointy, grippy F1 weapon. And really, as far as I'm concerned, that's the best of both worlds. What might generate more consternation amongst fans of a certain era of Formula 1 is the flappy paddle gearbox, which debuted on this car's predecessor, the 640, with its famously unreliable semi-automatic transmission. So no H-pattern here. For me, this mod does a wonderful job of capturing what is, to me at least, a golden period of F1. Between the turbo monsters of the 80s and the post-Senna change of direction in the mid-90s lies a series of cars that were driven by an incredible technological push. Before high cockpits, noses and 3-litre engines sort of messed up the look of the cars, there were a few years where F1 cars really did look the business, and that's where I was first introduced to the sport, so I guess I'm horribly biased. But all of that aside, I do think that this is probably the best representation of an early 90s Formula 1 car that we have in Assetto Corsa and probably sim racing as a whole. And beyond that, honestly, there's not a lot more to say. The car's been out for a couple of weeks now, so once again I am excruciatingly late to the party, though at least in this case I have a decent excuse. I expect that most of you will have probably already gone out and bought this car, but if you haven't, you should. RSS don't pay me to make these videos, I'm a paying customer like everyone else, and I think this is more than worth the less than a pint at my local asking price. There is of course a link in the video description. So guys, that just about brings things to a close here. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, it would be great if you could hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you can see more content like this in the future. So all that's left to say is goodbye, thank you so much for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.